London Baker, welcome to Sue Up the Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's awesome to see you here, and it's awesome to see your background behind you because I'm that nerd that when I see people post pictures, I just kind of start zooming in on their bookshelves. It's that
Yeah.
meme where it's like you see the bookshelves and the guy walks in, he's like, "Oh, you've never been so interesting to me." Every time I go over to someone's house, that's what happens. So I am curious if I was to show up at your home, what do you think the first book that I would be drawn to on your shelf would be?
Well, that's a great question. I have a lot of Stephen King. I've always loved Stephen King, so I have a lot of Stephen King. At the top of my shelf, you can't really see it, but I have
Hmm.
a 51 volume set of the Harvard classics. So
Wow.
that's one of my proudest ones because they're all old. The president of Harvard compiled a list of what he thought the just normal person needed to have a Harvard education, and it was a 5 foot shelf of books. So that's probably one of the first things you would see, but also a lot of Stephen King.
Also, I just want to point out because I do actually see it on the shelf. I have that exact same copy of the Barnes and Noble Count of Monte Cristo,
Yep.
which is a classic, one of my all-time favorite books. But okay, can I just say those are the types of things that I love seeing, are like those Harvard classics collections because I fully believe in education is an important thing, but I think that there is no better education than the one you are going to give yourself, which
Yeah,
usually comes from the accumulation of good books.
100% agree with that. Yeah. It's self-education is I think Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about that, how the self-education is the most important type of education.
I just started reading Brian Holiday's latest book of the Four Stoic Virtues, Wisdom Takes Work. And there is a chapter where he just goes into you have to soak everything up like a sponge.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we've got you on here today is because you publish Pull of the Tide. I always want to make sure I'm not saying tides like a Midwesterner talking about the Walmarts, but Pull of the Tide, London Baker, Veritas Entertainment, great novella, fun read. Tell me, where did this come from?
Okay, so I was on a road trip with my dad in Key West, and I think it was the last full day we booked a fishing trip. So it was
Hmm.
just me, my dad, and one guide, and we went out into just kind of the waters around the Keys, and we were fishing, and on the horizon, I saw a shipwreck, and it was on a sandbar, and it was just jutting out, just there's a bunch of them all around in the Keys, but there's just this one particular one. The sun was casting kind of this just dark shadow around it and the image just stuck with me. And that night, as I'm packing up my suitcase, I get out a notebook and I'm just like, I can't get that image of the shipwreck out of my head. And so that's the main character. His first dream is about that shipwreck that he keeps seeing. So that was where it came from. It was all from seeing that shipwreck in Key West with my dad. So that was a very real inspiration for that scene in that book.
It's always cool where stuff like that helps just bring this unique flavor. It brings inspiration. I, for the longest time, would say that travel is a cheap way of being interesting because of all the things you could do, traveling is like in today's day and age kind of the easiest. You just have to
Mhm.
buy a ticket somewhere.
Yeah.
That said, I have also come to appreciate the more I've traveled how important it is to going to different places, seeing different things, because that's where you start getting those things that are outside of your normal day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. My family's always been big on traveling. When I was in high school, we did all 50 states.
Hmm.
Travel's always been a big part, and then finding the inspiration to write in travel. Very
You had,
Hemingway.
I was gonna say, you had an article on, was it Expedition Society about like how, I think you actually did specifically talk about the Key West trip and just how
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that has contributed to your writing.
yeah. That one, that Key West trip, started with a python hunt in the Everglades, which is actually what my first published piece was about. So that Key West trip, it's done articles for me. It got the novella into my head. So I mean, it's paid itself back.
Are there any other like trips that you've taken or big trips on the horizon that you're like, this is going to be good story fodder?
I spend a lot of time up north, so anytime I can get up north in Michigan,
Hmm.
I always write my best stuff up north just because there's no distractions. It's trees and lakes and the
Hmm.
woods. So that's even though it's not, a crazy trip, that's always what I look forward to, the up north time because I get my best ideas just when there's nothing going on around me.
Hmm. Very Stephen King, very Hemingway. I actually have a note here because I saw you had talked about the Ernest Hemingway biography by Mary V. Dearborn, which
Yeah.
I had read a couple years ago too. Where did you pick it up? What did you think? Just like, did you read about Hemingway before this book? Obviously, I'm going to assume you've read his work, but had you read a biography on him?
Yeah, good question. So I have a problem, and I think you made a reel about this the other day. I'm good at spending money. I'm good at buying books. I'm good at wasting money on books. So I buy books and I'll keep them on my shelf until eventually I read them. So I bought that
Better than
Hemingway.
stocks.
Exactly, exactly. So I bought that Hemingway book a few years ago, and I didn't get to it until this summer. And I'd read Old Man in the Sea, I'd read Islands in the Stream, I'd read Farewell to Arms before I'd went to Hemingway's house in
Hmm.
Key West. And then after Key West, I was kind of fascinated with him as a person just because of all
Hmm.
these outlandish stories and stuff.
The
So
myth.
yes, the ethos around Hemingway. And so I read that biography because I had it, and it was very fascinating to see his development as a writer. And then I was in Paris over the summer and I read A Movable
Hmm.
Feast when I was in Paris.
Ooh,
So
excellent.
couldn't have been better, but I was so curious about the man behind the books, and so that's kind of what prompted me to pick that up.
Hmm. I love how Mary Dearborn does a great job of stripping away. She goes, here is the how the legend of Hemingway grew from who he was. And then you see like it in the 1920s he starts to separate as a person. There's the
Yeah.
image and then there's the man. And just
Yeah.
seeing the constant wrestling between those two different personalities that eventually develop.
Yeah. He put on a persona, and it was
Hmm.
interesting to see behind that persona and just read about the struggles he went through as a writer, not feeling like his work is good enough because I mean it's Hemingway, and to know that he struggled with that same imposter syndrome, it's a little reassuring.
Hmm. I think the so I at one point I think after I read Mary Dearborn's biography, and then I read a biography on Max Perkins, who was his editor,
Okay.
and I read an F. Scott Fitzgerald biography, all like within the same 12-month period. It was just fascinating to see how those three men really, because Perkins was the editor for both Fitzgerald and Hemingway. It's just interesting seeing how between those three men, literature itself changed.
Exactly. It defined the generation of American writers going forward. Like it shaped just those two people shaped so much of what literature became in the next 10, 20, 30, even up to now.
Hmm.
So it's kind of crazy how much of an influence just two or three people can have on the scope of American literature.
Hmm. Well, and like this is why their books are still rock solid, popular, etc. I've always leaned more towards Hemingway's short stories over
Mhm.
his full novels.
Yeah,
I've read only two or three of the novels still, but there's just a sharp crispness to every one of his short stories where I feel immersed in the world. And he still does that with the novels, but there's just something about the closed nature of his short stories where I feel like I'm literally walking past. I think it's the snows of Kilimanjaro, the mountains of Kilimanjaro. That one stands out to me always just because it feels like you're walking past a couple having this conversation.
yeah. His short stories are definitely where he thrives because he's just able to cut down everything that's unnecessary in his work, which is something I know I've personally struggled with to cut writing. I think Stephen King calls it killing your darlings, where it's like
Yes.
you have good writing in your book or your story, but it's unnecessary, so you have to get rid of it. And Hemingway was really good at getting rid of the stuff that didn't need to be there.
I am currently on like revision. I've been working on this one project for like literally a year and a half and keep getting to like the quarter mark,
Mhm.
uh, halfway mark, somewhere around there. For 17,000 words, I keep re-editing again and again. And now we're at that point where I'm like, the story has metastasized, it's changed. And I'm like, this was really good dialogue, but it no longer serves the plot in any way, shape, or form. As I've refitted it, it's time to just take the axe, slash it, hack it, get rid of it. I mean, it was October, so it's the appropriate time to become a slasher in my own novel.
Exactly. Yep, yep. That's the hardest part of writing is getting rid of the stuff that you know you like but doesn't fit the story. It's always difficult.
Hmm. You've been really prolific publishing various short stories with different anthologies or online. How do you kind of keep that pace up?
Yeah, so it's writing has always been a thing that I've loved to do. When I was in kindergarten, I had a notebook and I started drawing the story about an ant and his adventures. And my vocabulary, because I was in kindergarten, was so small that I got so frustrated I couldn't even write the words. So after 3 pages, I just started drawing, and it's just kind of kept up since then. In fourth grade, I started trying to do a fantasy novel. In
Hmm.
eighth grade, finished my first novella. And then when I hit high school, I just started trying to write every day
Hmm.
and writing as many stories as I could. And it wasn't until this year, after probably 10, 15 years of consistent storytelling, that I
Hmm.
actually published something. And now 12 pieces of mine have been published with various places. So I think it's the fact that I've always written a lot
Hmm.
that I can just keep that up. I always
Yeah.
try at least a page a day. That's even if it's just a short story page or it's just all dialogue, I always try at least a page a day. And I treat it like you treat any other job. Like if you didn't show up one day to work and didn't explain why, you'd get fired after a few times of doing that. And so I hold myself to that as a writer, where it's like if I'm not writing every day for no reason, then that's a problem with me. So I just always force myself to sit at the desk, force myself to work.
Hmm.
And even if it's not good, I know I'll just fix it later. So I think that's
Hmm.
kind of how I keep up that pace of just working every day and knowing that if it's trash, I can fix it later.
I mean, really, that's the thing. You can't edit a blank page.
Mhm.
And also, hats off to you. You've been doing this for like 15 years. That's really great. Like, I can't remember what the statistic was, but it's that idea of like the 10,000 hours rules for writers. It's like 100,000 to 100,000 words is how much you have to write to start writing anything worth reading.
Yeah. I would say that that is pretty accurate. And there was a few times in, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade when I was just starting to really seriously write where I wanted to get my stuff published because I was doing all this work.
Hmm.
Nobody was reading it because I won't show my family, I won't show my friends, but I wanted people to read it.
Yes.
And so I really debated self-publishing at, 13, 14 years old. And there's a part of me right now that's so glad I didn't do that because I look
Yeah.
back at what I was writing then. And I mean, it's the characters are two-dimensional. The dialogue
Hmm.
sounds like it was written by ChatGPT. Like it's terrible. And so there's definitely the element of what you were saying with over time you develop a craft, you can start actually writing something that's decent. Do I feel now that I'm good? Not really, not all the time. But there's stuff that am comfortable having out there and comfortable having people read, whereas the stuff I was writing 5, 6 years ago, not the case with that.
Well, and there's that rough point where, as a writer, it does take living a little bit to get there.
Yeah,
And unless you're a G.A. Henty hero, ages 16, you probably haven't got enough life to
yeah,
really bring out life into your story, which I always remember being that age and going, well, that sucks because I can't do anything. I can't just suddenly be older and suddenly live more.
yeah.
But it is the process and it is like that apprenticeship that you have to go through of literally growing up to be able to write.
Yeah, my first full-length novel. I haven't published a full-length novel, just novellas and short stories, but I have written a full-length novel my junior year of high school. I wrote the whole thing in a month and a half.
Nice.
Um, and the story itself is all right, but the characters, I'm, 16 writing these people who are in their 30s. And so there's just like a disconnect. And so it was one of those things where I sat down when I was done with it. I'm like, I'm glad I finished this project. Nobody's ever
Hmm.
going to read this because it is terrible. I'm glad I did it, but I need to grow up a little more before I try to
Hmm.
write another novel, before I try to portray life because there's like a naivety to this. So
Hmm.
yeah, that you're definitely right with that.
I think it's really cool that you've been working on short fiction at this point because personally, I've always found short fiction is really tough. Trying
Mhm.
to get anything sub 10,000 words, I feel like I don't have enough runway to really do
Mhm.
anything with. But being able to do that makes your, much like Hemingway, Hemingway perfected his short fiction before he started writing full-length novels. Being able to perfect that concise writing makes full-length novels so much better. Like you just tell when the pages rip as you read them.
Yeah, it's definitely a lost art or a dying art. Short stories really, you don't see many
Hmm.
short stories coming out. I mean, at least as much as you used to. And my inspiration for doing short stories was Stephen King. That's how he
Hmm.
started. And so when I was younger, I would read Stephen King short stories. And here in his memoir on writing, which is an amazing book, he would talk about
Hmm.
how the rejection slips just piled up and piled up. And that was what kept me going, after getting all these rejections at, 13, 14, 15 years old, getting these
Hmm.
rejections and knowing, okay, if Stephen King did this, then it's fine. Just I got to keep at it and keep writing until I eventually get published.
Hmm. What was the first piece that you published?
It was called Burrs, Brambles, and Pythons, and it was an article about my python hunt because pythons are invasive
Hmm.
in the Florida Everglades, and so they'll pay guides to go out there and just collect them. And so my dad and I, before we went to Key West, we flew into Miami and then drove to the Everglades and then python hunted. And I wrote an article about that and sold it to an outdoor magazine. I think it was American Clubman was the
That's
magazine.
cool. That's cool. It's stuff like that where I love knowing that life still has that fringe, that frontier feel. It's like when I hear about people going boar hunting, and I'm like, they're still hunting wild boars. God bless America. Now I can add python hunting to that list of like, hoorah.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience, and it was a little weird having my first published piece be about that because I never thought of myself as a nonfiction writer, and
Hmm.
like I never saw myself publishing like outdoor works, and I would say that's probably a third of what I've published at this point is nonfiction, travel, just
Hmm.
outdoor stories, which is it's a little strange that that's the route some of the my work has taken. But I mean, I was obviously so beyond thrilled to get that piece published. It was a weird feeling having a
Hmm.
nonfiction piece be the first piece after I did fiction for so long.
Originally, my plan had just been to write nonfiction. I was like, I'm not going to write this fiction stuff because at age like whatever, 13, 14, I realized I needed to live more to be able to write actual fiction with people. Whereas nonfiction, I can think of ideas. I can literally steal from other books and remaster it into my own stuff. And so for years, I wrote essays. I realized that doing that has contributed far more to the more intellectual lives of my characters now than it would have if I had just tried writing fiction. But I think that the cool thing is Ian Fleming, obviously, shocker. I'm a big Bond fan. He wrote excellent pieces of travel. Like Thrilling Cities is one of his better known nonfiction works. And being able to offer that nonfiction just view of the world helps enrich writing and give it more panache. Like that isn't it the one of the trying to remember Hemingway has like this whole fishing story that just it so beautifully captures the place. And
Uh,
that,
Big Two-Hearted River.
yes, that I think is one of those things that's really cool when you can get the reps in writing nonfiction and writing things that are outdoors is it allows you to describe things and places, which honestly is one of the things I think I struggle with in my writing. So hats off to you because I think that an example, again, Pull of the Tide, you do a great job of describing Key West, describing the place where you feel the sweat dripping off your back.
Yeah, and I mean, Pull of the Tide was a weird one for me too because the genre I started writing in was kind of just speculative fiction. It was horror, it
Hmm.
was fantasy, it was science fiction. And so then to write something like Pull of the Tide and then a lot of the Western pieces I've done, the noir piece that's coming out, a lot of that it's surprising to me that that's
Hmm.
the route some of my work has taken because that's not, again, what I started out to write, which is it's cool, but it's just a little bizarre.
Honestly, like I love that you're writing more in this genre though, because with a name like London Baker, I feel like you were born destined to write Hemingway-esque man outdoor fiction.
Well, I appreciate that.
So let's talk about the noir anthology a little bit. I'm really excited. You and I are both in it. As of this dropping, the noir collection is available for people to go out and get a copy. Tell me just a little bit about the story and don't spoil it for me because I haven't read it yet.
So my story is called Dry Fly, and it was inspired actually another fishing trip with my dad. My dad and I were out on a river, and I just had the idea of what if I was fishing here and I found a body?
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the direction the story takes. It's a cop who's in a little bit of trouble, so he goes up north to his cabin, and he's fishing and stumbles upon a situation he probably shouldn't have seen. And so it's just about that unfolding. So it was a fun one to write. It took me a lot longer than most of my short stories do. It's a little longer. I think it's
Hmm.
the max cap was about 5,000 words if I remember correctly, and I think it's right 5,040 or something like that. But it took me forever to edit it. It took me forever to get the pacing right, and the ending was not my planned ending. And so when I
Hmm.
wrote the ending, I had to go back and put foreshadowing
Yes.
in throughout the rest of the story. So I'll be interested when you get a chance to read it when it comes out, or I guess it's out when this is out. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on it.
I'm excited. I love noir. Like I think that as a genre, it just fits this unique mold where I mean, they just did the episode on the Men's Venture Fiction podcast, What is Noir? And the reality is there's so many different definitions. I think film noir has a very strict definition, but if you're going just generally, there's all of the things that you can do with it and play with it. As long as
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it's got some darkness to it, it's got some tension. And I think what is going to be exciting about reading your piece is seeing that you can kind of have that in almost any situation or any place, even when it's not like the hard bitten streets. Like I submitted my story to them right away, and it's much more classically private eye, things go happen, all that stuff. Which immediately then my panic was, is everyone going to do this exact same story? It's just going to be page after page of, I saw her legs going for days. But I'm really excited because it sounds like the anthology is really going to have a great collection of different kinds of noir, and that's what has me excited.
Yeah, when I first saw the call for submissions, I wanted to write something that was not in the city because I don't
Hmm.
like spending time in the city. So I wanted a story that was out of the city. And I wanted to do the side of noir that's the morally gray,
Hmm.
not the, the stereotypical private eye, but like, can I do something where there's a morally gray character? Because I feel like that's what
Hmm.
noir is. It's just these
Hmm.
characters that might be doing good things, but they're not great people. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of what I wanted to capture with Dry Fly.
I think that I heard it was either Brian Townsley from Starlight Pulp. I think he said noir is shitty people making shitty choices.
Exactly. Yep.
And essentially, that's what it tends to be. But that's where I think, again, it gives good story.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we all worry that we're making the wrong choice.
exactly. I had a story come out, oh, I don't even know. It was like June or July. And it was the story actually I wrote in Hemingway's house.
Hmm.
It was called God is Bleeding. And so that was my first foray into noir. And I've done a few more after that because it's a fun genre to write these people who really suck and then just kind of try to make people like them or at least
Hmm.
relate to them.
Have you read any Elmore Leonard?
No.
Okay, he Get Shorty, the movie is based on one of his books. He's the guy that wrote The Character Became Justified, that was the show on FX. His great art and craft is creating these oftentimes just criminals that are horrible people, but they're funny and they constantly, you're like, oh, you just made a bad choice, and I'm so sorry, Jimmy, the whatever thief. You shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
Go
no,
ahead.
go. I mean, I think that's part of the fun though with a lot of darker fiction is seeing what evil you can relate to and seeing like
Hmm.
realizing you're not as good of a person as you thought you were because now you're cheering for this guy who just killed three people or something. You're like, minute, what's going on?
Okay, if we ever can, I think that that should be the subtitle of the Noir anthology too. If Veritas ever does it, Noir anthology, what evil you can relate to. Electric
Yep,
Boogaloo.
yep, that would be great. Yep.
Luke, Nathaniel, you guys have one job. We've told you what it is. You had a great little reel that you shared on Instagram the other day about the idea of ubiquitous assimilation.
Hmm.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about this with you because A, can you present the concept and then just let's talk through it because I think that it's so important for today's culture, especially when as creators we are in turn trying to create things for people to see, but there's so much noise. It's sometimes like you're
Yeah.
just yelling.
Yeah, so a bit ubiquitous assimilation is the idea that we're taking in everything all the time. We're just sponges soaking in information. And I think social media is probably the biggest uh, predator when it comes to that because it's just so much information no matter what you're doing. It's comments, it's videos, it's
Hmm.
reels. And our brains aren't designed to take in everything all the time because not everything is significant. So, like when you're
Hmm.
reading a good book or watching a good show, it's like that's what you're supposed to be taking in. You're supposed to take in the creativity, the characters, the dialogue, the setting. But we do that same thing when we're scrolling through the news or when we're looking at
Hmm.
social media. And so we're taking in with the same level of importance stuff that doesn't actually matter. And so then that just impedes our creative ability because we don't know what's important and what's not and what we should, preserve in art and what we shouldn't. And so I've been fascinated with like what am I taking in and how is it affecting me as an artist? How is it affecting my craft and what do I not need to let in anymore?
Hmm. Have there been any strategies you've implemented to try to manage this? Because again, I think the volume level of just the world is constantly at a 10, and it takes so much effort to get down to even a 5.
Yeah, I'd say the main thing that I need to work on, and I've been trying, failing a lot, but trying, is not scrolling because I
Hmm.
mean it's bad for your attention span. It's bad
Hmm.
for your creativity. I do it all the time. I wish I didn't. It's the one thing I'm like, I need to just not do this. I would write so much more, read so much more if I didn't scroll. Um, and then also just kind of staying out of the news, just
Hmm.
staying out of the things happening in the world because it's just either going to make you angry or overexcited and it's not going to add anything to your life. I always just tried to get my world news from old books because humans
Hmm.
repeat their mistakes, and so
Yes and
I
amen.
can see exactly what's happening in the world by reading a book written in the 1800s because we haven't changed that much. And so just staying out of the news and then trying to work on not scrolling and not killing my attention span. I think those are the two things that I'm personally trying to do.
I mean, really, I think that's fantastic. I'm still trying to figure out how to. It's the odd position because as a creator, I'm trying to figure out how do I make people want to see more of what I do. So I'm starting to study like these are the ways that you do the hooks, et cetera, et cetera. In turn, I stand there and go, I now see all the ways I am manipulated on a daily basis by the
Yeah.
little box in my hand, and it's utterly terrifying because it is so much of just trying to the everything is created essentially on our phones to try to manipulate our brains at this point.
Yeah.
And that's kind of horrifying on a certain level, but also we have the option to opt out. Like that's the cool thing. We can literally turn off our phones. We can go take a walk. And to the point of learning things from old books in Wisdom Takes Work, one of the things he was talking about was Plutarch. And there's a reason why virtually every major politician of significance that we respect today has studied Plutarch because
Mhm.
Plutarch's stuff that he talked about transcends to today because these are the exact same issues that have been faced. And I didn't know Plutarch was like a local politician back in his day. And that was part of the reason why he was able to feed out some of this is why this is significant.
Yeah, I mean, in fiction and in nonfiction, philosophy, theology, classics, you see yourself in these people. You see our world
Hmm.
in the worlds of, 100, 200, 300, 400, etc. years ago. And so it is kind of reassuring and also a little scary to know that things haven't changed that much.
Hmm. Mankind, the wheel keeps repeating.
Yep.
I also had a note here to ask you about cataloging your library because you've set about this ambitious task, and for anyone who's watching be this on YouTube, they can see you have an excellent collection of books behind you. I'm so glad to know I'm not the only one that starts to run out of shelf space and begins to put books on top of books. I feel like less of a worse person, so thank you for being that reflection for me. What made you decide to catalog your library, and how's it going?
So it is a long process. I haven't counted my books in I think 3 or 4 years, and the last time I counted, I was in the 900s. And I've bought probably that many books in the last 3 to 4 years. So all of my shelves are double stacked, and then there's stuff on top of those double stacks as well. Um, and it's a tedious process because I have a Google sheet. I'm scanning
Uh-huh.
in a library scanner. I'm scanning in
Yep.
the ISBNs, and then I'm manually typing in the titles and the genre.
Oh
So
boy.
I wanted to get a count of how many books do I own because a
Hmm.
thousand is a technical library. I know I have
Hmm.
1,000, but
Oh.
I want to see how far over that I am.
Hmm.
Um, and I really only have the brain space to do like one or two cubbies a day. I
Hmm.
can't do much more than that because I mean one of these little cubbies on the shelf probably has 40 books in it.
Yeah.
So I've wanted to see the count of how many books I have, and it's a lot more of an ambitious project than I initially thought it was going to be. So I think I'm at 720 something cataloged so far, but
Congratulations.
it'll be at least another week or two before I have the final count.
That's awesome. Well, I think that the cool thing is being able to. So, the thing that I've learned, my work is in compliance. So, I figured out oftentimes the issue isn't necessarily if someone has something or not, but if they can find it.
Yes.
And knowing where something is makes a huge difference, especially if you're writing. Like, I try to keep my books vaguely cataloged in a subject matter, so I know which part of the shelf to go to if I need to reference something.
Yeah.
And just realizing how much of a difference that makes if I am writing nonfiction or if I'm trying to figure out an idea, then it just makes the whole process simpler.
Yeah, whenever my friends come over, or we have my cousins over or something, they'll come in here and they'll play a game where they find a book on the shelf and then they say, London, where's X? London, where's this book? And then they see how quickly I can find it because it's not very organized, but in my head it makes sense and I know where
Hmm.
stuff is. So it's become sort of a family game of London, where's Pride and Prejudice? London, where's Louis L'Amour? And so it's been, I get made fun of, but I enjoy it. It's fun.
Hey, what is life if you can't enjoy being made fun of? Have you done the Sherlock Holmes like mental library thing where you've organized it in your mind?
I haven't. My brain is too full to do that. There's too many other things cataloged up there. So, but I mean, yeah, Sherlock Holmes. I have a book. I read part of it a few years back called Mastermind, and it's
Hmm.
about Sherlock Holmes psychology, and that was interesting.
Hmm. That's the one by Maria Konnikova. How to
I
Think Like
believe
Sherlock
so.
Holmes.
I believe so.
Well worth finishing. She has written a book on Sherlock Holmes, con artists, and poker. So
Interesting.
I'm really looking forward to seeing which of my other niche interests she's going to choose to write about the psychology of next.
Yeah, I read it because I used to do theater, and so I was
Hmm.
playing Sherlock Holmes in a play.
Oh,
So I'm
cool.
trying to get. I was watching the Benedict Cumberbatch, the Robert Downey Jr., trying to read up on his psychology, the stories behind him. So that's kind of where. And then I stopped halfway through because the show happened, and I was like, okay, I'm sick of Sherlock Holmes right now.
Okay, so genuine question. Does any footage exist of you as Sherlock Holmes?
Oh, I'm sure there is some.
Cue deep dive on YouTube in like the next 20 minutes to find this and share it. So, what do you have cooking on in the background right now?
So I'm finishing a Western story right now. I'm at I want to say 2,000 something words. I'm aiming between 3 to 4. So I
Hmm.
hope to finish that. It's Saturday right now. I hope to finish that by Monday or Tuesday. I have a few more short stories I want to write, and I'm hoping to either after I finish the short stories, as winter approaches, I'm hoping to either do a novella or
Hmm.
try another novel. I'm hoping to do something a little longer because I
Hmm.
feel like after having a dozen pieces published, I'm a little more vetted than I was when it comes to my
Hmm.
writing. So I feel like I can start trying to do stuff that's longer.
Hmm. I certainly think that you can. I'm excited to see what you come up with. Are you planning on submitting something for Events Adventure Fiction May in the 26?
Yeah, I've got a few ideas. There's one thing that I've started writing. I think I got 10,000 words. I don't know if I'll
Nice.
submit that for it, but yeah, I've started thinking about what I want to do for that and kind of what, because when I did Pull of the Tide, it I think I wrote Pull of the Tide over the course of maybe a month. And so I
Hmm.
didn't have too much time to really because the deadline was approaching and I didn't have too much
Hmm.
time to kind of what do I want to do with this? And so now that I have a little more time, I'm kind of thinking through, hey, what can I do with this? I want to make it longer because I think the guideline was 10 to 30,000 words or something like that, if I
Hmm.
remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it's 20 maybe, but yeah, it's not terribly, you've got plenty of space.
Yeah, so I think Pull the Tide is 10,000 words.
Hmm.
And that was surely because of the fact that I was running out of time. So I would like to start earlier this year, or well, next year, and maybe have it be a little longer,
Hmm.
and edit it a little more, add a little more nuance to the story. Because I mean, I like Pull the Tide. It did awesome things for me. It sold well. I
Hmm.
enjoyed writing it, but
Amazon
there's
bestseller. Congratulations.
yes, thank you, thank you. I mean, that was kind of surreal, but yeah, I want to do something a little more ambitious, I think, for next May. So.
Hmm. I think it's a great way of being able to experiment. Like Unwanted Passenger 100% was I wanted to see if this idea had any legs. Now that I know it has some legs, I'm trying to develop it into a more long-running serial, but it's really just fun to, and that's the great thing about short stories too, is being able to have a playground for ideas
Yeah,
and spin out characters, concepts, or settings. In Elmore Leonard's collection of short stories, there's like two or three that I'm like, he literally took this exact same plot and just expanded it into a full-length book.
yeah.
And he just changed like literally one of the characters' names. I'm like, if this is canon, then this Marshall did the exact same thing with two different criminals. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's part of the fun of being a writer is that you can use different things over again in different ways, and just experiment. It's a lot of experimentation.
Hmm. My wife and I have been listening to some of the Louis L'Amour novels
Mhm.
and on audiobook. And it's just been fascinating because you really can break them down into there's really only three or four different versions of the same story. But because the character is always different and he changes enough of the circumstances, it still feels fresh and fun each time.
Yeah, and that's what good writing's about. It's about the characters. It's about because you can have the most amazing plot, but if the character is bland,
Hmm.
nobody's gonna care. And so it's about developing those characters that people can relate to. That I think that's the most important thing when it comes to telling stories.
Hmm. Do you have any specific, like, these are the things I think of when I do character development, like a checklist or a vibe that you look for to like start the character and spin them out? Kind of what does your process look like for that?
What I used to do, I don't do this anymore. I haven't done it in a couple years. But what I used to do is I used to take my characters out to dinner. And what that looked like is I would write a short story of
Uh-huh.
myself going out to dinner with the main character of the novel or of the short story. And it would just be what we would have talked about if I'd went out for dinner, kind of like I'm interviewing them
Hmm.
while I'm at dinner with them, except I'm making it all up. And so that was what I did for a long time. And the only problem with that is that it took up a lot of time where I could have been writing the story.
Hmm.
Um, but when I write characters now, I try to think of like what is the good thing that this character can do? Like what is the thing that's redeemable? But then also adding realistic
Hmm.
flaws, realistic things that are like if this was a real person and you were their friend, you'd be like, why are you doing this? Stop.
Hmm.
I think it's just finding that balance of walking, like creating a character that people can look up to, they can root for, but then also it's not, some Tolkien level
Hmm. It's not
hero.
Aragorn.
Yeah, it's got to have some flaws, and that's why I love Stephen King because so many of his
Hmm.
characters are terrible human beings, but it's like you root for them because it's good versus evil.
Hmm. Well, I think that we like to root for people that are proficient, they're
Mhm.
competent, and that's why, like, as much as Thanos is the protagonist of Infinity War, is the thing. Like, the way the story is constructed, he's the one driving the action of the story, and it does a good job of balancing out his character enough where you're like, I don't want to necessarily see him succeed, but I'm glad to see the progress of the narrative. And I
Yeah,
think that good fiction should do that, where we want to see the story complete. We want to
yeah,
see either good succeed, or in the case of noir, we just want to see resolution to the
yeah.
story.
Yeah. And that's why I love working in the horror genre and the noir
Hmm.
genre, the darker side of fiction, because that's when you see good versus evil and resolution and
Hmm.
really play out. I
Hmm.
love good monster fiction. I
Hmm.
love creatures and stuff like that. And so I think that's one of the things that draws me is like finding that resolution, putting these characters in situations where they have to act. And I think that's what's always drawn me to that genre.
Do you have a favorite like monster movie that you'd recommend to people?
Well, if we're talking monster movie, Frankenstein,
Hmm.
Guillermo del Toro, that just came out and
Oh,
it's
I
on Netflix
heard.
now. It was fantastic. I read Frankenstein for the first time this year.
Hmm.
Absolutely amazing. She was 19 when she wrote it, which is
Yeah,
incredible.
mind
So
blowing.
that's just that imposter syndrome 101 right there. Like if she was writing that, I'm never touching a pen again. But that movie, while it did not follow the book exactly,
Hmm.
the spirit of the book was in it, and you could
Hmm.
just tell it was a passion project. Del Toro's always wanted to do Frankenstein. So if we're talking monster movies, I know that's not necessarily horror, that's more gothic, but it was fantastic. I
Hmm.
adored it. I'm gonna watch it again probably before the year is up. It was beautiful. I love that movie.
I'm definitely gonna have to check it out because it's been a long time since I've read Frankenstein. When we had Sean Jakes on the show, he made a comment that his day job is that he teaches literature in
Mhm.
like high school. And I was like, what's the one book everyone should have in their summer reading? He's like, Frankenstein. Frankenstein is this is all these different things about literature in one book. And it's amazing for the history of it, context, the book itself. And Del Toro is one of those directors. I just watched retrospective on the creature from the Black Lagoon. And of
Mhm.
course, Shape of Water comes up. And it's understanding that Del Toro has this sympathy for the monster that
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing him bring on stage when that is the point
Yeah.
of Frankenstein. So, oh, and the cast looks spectacular too.
And when you look at even the just the trailer and the sets and everything, so there's part of Frankenstein is the Arctic. They're in the Arctic. They're on a
Hmm.
boat.
Hmm.
And he constructed a life-sized vessel for the movie.
Oh.
It's not like green screen or anything. Like it's a
Hmm.
legit boat, and all of the sets are as real as he could possibly make them. Like Victor Frankenstein's lab was a real set. It wasn't green screen.
Oh.
It's like there's just an attention to detail and a
Hmm.
level of this guy cares about this story, and this is him making a movie he wants to watch. So it was beautifully done, and also, I mean, it had a Netflix budget, so there was a lot of money that was going into making the sets and paying these actors. It was phenomenal. You definitely need to check that out.
I love that Netflix makes one of two movies, a forgettable film that you play on your phone while you watch, or prestige picture that is going to be nominated for many Oscars and be remembered for generations to come.
Yeah, there's a duality that exists within Netflix. I mean, I'm
I'm
watching
ex
Stranger Things again right now.
How is it?
It's good. I mean, it's been 9 years since the first season came out.
Crazy. I saw a picture of like actors then, actors now, and I'm like, oh dear goodness, I'm old.
And that's just, I mean, it's one of my favorite books, it by Stephen King.
Hmm.
And Stranger Things took so much from that novel and just like the idea of these kids up against something that's otherworldly and powerful. So I absolutely love that show.
Hmm.
It's Netflix is very hit or miss. There's some very good and well-made things, and then there's some things where you're just like, who paid for this? But Stranger Things, Frankenstein, I'll give them props for that.
I think Stranger Things was the most recent version of you know these five or six things, and we're going to take it, put it in a blender, and it's going to be amazing and define what that thing is.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones did that, Star Wars did it. Stranger Things, I think, is the most recent example I've seen of that being done and not just feeling like a ripoff.
Yeah. I mean, the directors have talked about the different influences they've had, Jaws, Stephen
Hmm.
King, just kind of those types of films. And I mean, you can tell when you watch it that it's a blend of things, but it's done tastefully. So I
Hmm.
think that's what makes it so enjoyable.
Hmm. London, normally I ask a writer what their process or routine looks like, but we've already touched on that. So instead, I'm going to ask you what you are reading right now.
What am I reading? Great question. I have it on the floor. I'm reading King King Sorrow by Joe Hill. So Joe Hill is
Hmm.
Stephen King's son.
Hmm.
And it follows I think it's 30 or 40 years. It's kind of like an epic, and it's about these six friends who in college summon a dragon, and
Oh.
they're doing it to kill someone who is they have like a drug deal went wrong, and so they need
Hmm.
to get rid of this person.
You know, when it happens.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us. And dragons are in literature, they're very sneaky, they're very good with
Hmm.
riddles and their words. And so they think they're making a deal for a one-time kill on Easter of this drug deal.
Oh.
Except the wording of the dragon is, I actually want you to do this every year. You pick somebody that I'm going to kill on Easter every year. If you don't pick somebody, I'm going to come after you. And so
Hmm.
it's following them throughout their whole lives of having to pick somebody every year for this dragon to come in and kill. And it's so well done, and
Hmm.
it's a page turner, but also there's excellent character development. So I know Stephen King talked about how he's ending his career, like he's getting close to the end. He says he has
Hmm.
at least two books lined up that he wants to write, and then he's gonna evaluate there, which is devastating news to me because I love Stephen King. But his son, Joe Hill, writes just like him, and so it's like if you change the name on the cover, you could you can pretend it's a Stephen King book. So as long as Joe Hill's still writing, I can be happy. It's really good. I mean it's like 800 pages, so it's definitely an investment of time, but it's well worth the read.
That's awesome. It sounds intriguing. I am glad that you're enjoying it. London, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you, your work, and what you have coming out?
I'd say Instagram's probably the best place to connect with me at London the Writer. That's pretty active on there. I respond to DMs, comments, and stuff. So that's where I post writing updates. Yeah, I'd say that's the main spot to go.
Awesome. I will link it in the show notes along with Pull of the Tide, and you've got a Substack, so I'll also link that in the show notes.
And then don't forget the noir short story collection.
And the Noir Short Story Collection, which features you, myself, and I'm so excited. My wife is also in it, and it's just really kind of cool. But I looked at that list, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a really great collection.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'm excited to read it.
Awesome. Well, London, thanks again for coming on the show. Until next time, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.